Today, we're looking at South Korea's national pension system, but probably not in the way you're used to. We're going to step away from all the usual debates about numbers and dates. Instead, we're diving into a really radical philosophy from our source material that asks a bigger question. What is a pension even for? So, let's jump right in.
You've heard this question a million times, right? Is the national pension going to collapse? It's a question that causes a lot of anxiety, and for good reason. I mean, you see the projections that the fund could be completely empty in just a few decades, and that fear, it feels very real.
So the conversation we usually have is this sort of tug of war. Should we pay more in premiums? Should we get less in benefits? Should we push retirement age back? And it always seems to end up pitting younger generations against older ones. But what if that whole way of thinking is just wrong? What if the money problem isn't the real problem at all?
Our source material makes a pretty bold claim. It says that to really get to the bottom of this crisis, you've got to stop looking at the spreadsheets. The real problem isn't about finances, it's about politics.
And the argument goes something like this. Way back when the pension fund was just getting started, it was small, and everyone kind of worked together. But as it grew and grew into this massive trillion-won national treasure chest, it stopped being a safety net and started looking a lot more like a prize to be won.
So this is where the source draws a really important line in the sand. On one side, you have what it calls true politics, the kind that's supposed to serve the people and create stability. But on the other, you have cartel politics. Now, this isn't about political parties in the way we normally think of them. It's talking about these powerful groups on both the left and the right who are more interested in fighting over the country's resources, like that giant pension fund, for their own power, not for the good of the country.
And this has a huge knock-on effect. Think about it from an investor's point of view. If you see a country where the political winds could shift dramatically every few years, are you going to put your money there? Probably not. That kind of instability makes people nervous. So, according to this argument, it's this internal political fighting that's really holding the entire nation back.
Okay, but the thinking here goes even deeper than that. It's not just about questioning how the pension is being managed. It's about questioning the fundamental reason we even have it in the first place.
Now this is a total redefinition of the word. The source is asking us to just throw out the idea of a pension as this reward everyone gets for retiring. Instead, it says we should see it for what it should be, a last resort, a true safety net designed only for people who have genuinely fallen on hard times and need support later in life.
And here's the philosophy that's driving that idea. It makes a big distinction between work, which is what you do for a paycheck and ends when you retire, and activity, which is an elder's ongoing purpose in life. The core belief is that your value as a person doesn't just stop at 65. Elders have this incredibly important role to play, contributing their wisdom and their experience back to society.
So if you follow that logic, real security doesn't come from a government deposit into your bank account. It comes from living a meaningful life. If an elder continues their activity, whatever that may be, and contributes to their community, they'll earn respect. And that respect from the society they helped build is the true safety net. A pension just becomes, well, unnecessary.
All right, get ready, because this next part is maybe the most provocative idea in this entire explainer. It takes a term we all think we know, welfare recipient, and it's about to flip it completely upside down. Seriously, before we move on, just take a second. When I say the words welfare recipient, who do you picture in your mind? Got that image? Okay, because it's probably about to get shattered.
So, according to the source, these are some of the real welfare recipients in our society. University professors, CEOs, famous celebrities. I know, it sounds crazy, right? It's not about lacking money. It's about being dependent on something else entirely. Let me explain the logic.
And here it is. This is the core definition. In this worldview, being a welfare recipient has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you have. It's a state of being where you can't live out your own true will, where you're dependent on something outside of your own purpose and your own contribution.
So how does that work? Well, it comes down to popularity versus respect. See, popularity is something that comes with a fancy title or with fame. It's temporary, it's conditional, it depends on what other people think of you. Respect, on the other hand, is something you earn through your contributions to society. The argument is, if your whole sense of self is tied up in your title or your fame, you're not actually free to act on your own will, you're dependent. And in this philosophy, that is its own form of welfare.
So, after all that deep philosophical talk, where does that leave us? What's the actual solution being proposed?
Well, it all starts with a concept the source calls the law of nature. The thinking here is almost karmic. The idea is that if you take something from the system that you don't truly need, like a pension payment when you're already well off, you're creating an imbalance in the universe. And according to this philosophy, nature or the universe will eventually correct that imbalance, often by taking something of equal value from you in a painful way. It's a pretty powerful argument for only taking what you truly need.
And all of that philosophy leads to a very clear set of policy ideas. First, the pension exists only as a safety net for those who genuinely need it. Second, and this is key, it should never cover 100% of their needs. By covering, say, 70%, you leave this 30% gap, and that gap is there on purpose. It gives people a reason to strive, to work, to maintain their dignity and their drive to improve their own situation.
So who makes these decisions? How do you figure out who is truly needy and exactly what they need? The source proposes a really futuristic solution. Take human bias out of the equation completely. Instead of letting politicians and committees argue for years and come up with flawed plans, you feed all the nation's data to an AI. It could, in theory, impartially calculate the precise support needed for every single individual, and do it in under an hour. No politics, no human error.
And really, that's what this all comes down to. As you can see, this is so much bigger than just pension policy. It's a whole philosophy about how to live, about purpose, and about what we contribute to the world. It definitely forces you to ask some pretty big questions, and it leaves us with this one to think about. If the work you do for money isn't the whole story, then what is the activity that truly gives your life meaning? What's your real purpose?